Hey there, Justin with Pool Elementary. And as the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting colder, it's time to close down and winterize your pool. As you can see, we've got our pool all nice and crystal clear. We've spent the time to net out all the leaves and do the vacuuming or put our robotic vacuum in the pool. Before closing, we want to make sure the pool is perfectly balanced and the chlorine levels are high. Then we can add our winterizing pool kit, which basically includes the algicide and some type of chlorine or non-chlorine shock. Different winterizing pool kits come with different things, so just follow the instructions on the actual winterizing kit. Real quick, I just want to go over some products that you might come across for winterizing your pool. A lot of these winterizing kits come with like an algicide, a non-chlorine shock or a chlorine shock, and then also some of them come with the enzyme cleaner. If you don't go out and buy one of these pool kits, you really only need to balance your pool and get your chlorine levels up, and then buy some type of algicide that contains copper. That's what most of them have. Copper is what kills algae. Another product that you're definitely going to need during winterization is an RV marine antifreeze, and you want to get a good one that's rated for 50 below or more. And most of your RV marine antifreeze is gonna even say on the front of the label that it's for pools and spas. And basically the RV marine antifreeze is safer for people to come in contact. You're also going to need winterizing plugs for your return jets and your skimmers. You can go with a plastic threaded 1.5" plug like so with a O-ring, and these just screw into 1.5" return jet lines in your skimmer. Or you can go with a rubber expansion plug. I normally use size 10 for 1.5", and I use size 12 for 2". You can also buy this multi-purpose plug for your skimmer. This plug plugs the skimmer, and it also protects the skimmer housing from ice expansion. Now that the pool is crystal clear, it comes time to drain the pool down. We're going to drain the pool down below the lowest return jet, and you can do this one of two ways. You can actually use your pump with a sand filter and a multi-port valve and drain it down to waste off of the main drain, or you can just use a submersible pump to drain it down to where you need it to be. If you do have a sand filter and you can drain your pool to waste, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So upon coming into your pump house, first thing is you want to make sure your heater's off. And then basically we're going to turn the pump off. So before actually draining the pool to waste, we always want to make sure our filter's clean. So we're going to go ahead and move our multi-port valve over to backwash. And then we're going to backwash for a few minutes and just let it get itself nice and clean. Basically, you can watch this eyesight right here, and this is going to tell you what's going through the lines and tell you when your actual filter's clean. Now that our filter's clean, we'll rinse for a good 45 seconds. And after we've got our multi-port valve to waste, we're going to come down to our pump, and our suction side's on the front end of it. Since we're going to be bringing down the water level below the skimmer, we're going to have to figure out which valve, because normally you'll have a line coming in from the skimmer and one coming in from the main drain. We're going to have to figure out which line is which if you don't have them labeled. This one says skimmer on it, so we know that this valve's for the skimmer. If the actual valve is parallel with the piping, it's open, and if we turn it this way, now we know it's closed. So right now this skimmer's closed. If you don't know which one is which, you're gonna just have to leave the pump running and turn one of them off and go check to see if the skimmer's still pulling. If the skimmer isn't pulling, then you know you've turned off the skimmer, and I would take a Sharpie or a marker and mark them. So with our skimmer shut down, our main drain open, now and our multi-port valve set to waste, we can turn it on. And now this is gonna send all of our water out our backwash line, and we can drain down our pool. If for some reason this valve isn't shutting down our skimmer completely and you can still hear it sucking air, or the pump won't stay primed, we can actually come out to the skimmer itself and put either a marine rubber plug in it or one of these 1022 winterizing plugs. As you can hear, that skimmer's gargling, so we know that that valve is pretty much wore out. So in order to keep the air from sucking down here as the water level gets below the skimmer faceplate, we're going to put in one of our winterizing plugs and just seal this off like so. And hand tight should work. As you can see, the gargling's gone. And now we're pulling off the main drain and draining this pool down. If your pool doesn't have the sand filter and the multi-port so you can drain it to waste, and you have a cartridge filter, it's best just to go ahead and get yourself a quality submersible pump like this one. This is a little giant. It does like 1,200 gallons per hour, and it makes really quick work of draining this pool down. And that's it. We just set it right into the shallow end and run the line out. And you're just going to want to make sure that your lines ran someplace where it can handle a couple thousand gallons of water, and it's not going to run back into your neighbor's house or your house. And as funny as that sounds, it has happened where the actual person had to borrow his sump pump to the neighbor to pump out his basement because he drained his pool into his basement. So just a heads up on that. While your pool's draining, this is a great time to pull the rest of your ladders and your rails. I also like to take my skimmers out, and then I'll take everything over and I'll spray it down with a highly concentrated bleach solution to kill any algae or bacteria. Then we'll remove any solar covers. Upon removing your bubble cover or solar blanket from your pool, you're going to want to make sure you cover it up with one of these solar cover wraps, or even a tarp from your local hardware store will work. And then I like to put some bungees around it just to hold it tight, because we want to keep our solar blankets out of the winter's elements and keep the UV rays off of them during the winter. Now that our water level's a good inch below our return jets, we're going to go ahead and pull all of our return fittings. And you're just going to twist these out. And if basically the return eyeball and the outside faceplate comes off and leaves the inner part of the return jet, the quick and easy way to get these out without using an actual vice grip or channel locks and messing up the threads is just one of these wire cutters or strippers. There's actually 2 notches in these return jets on these vinyl and fiberglass pools where you can lock it in and just spin those out freely. Like so. And as you can see, there's those 2 notches in there. When it comes to blowing out your pool lines, you have about 3 options. You can either use a shop vac, which I recommend at least a 4.5 horsepower vac or bigger. The industry makes a lot of these air blowers. This one's pretty old and works great. Or you can get attachments that'll actually thread right into your actual pump. And this one that fits this pump is just a MPT fitting. It looks like it's about a 1/2 inch. In order to get the actual size that your pump is, you can just pull one of the pump plugs out of the bottom of it, take it down to your hardware store, and get the size that matches. First step to winterizing this pool is we're gonna take out all the plugs and all of the equipment. So we're first gonna take the top off of our pump. Then we're going to pull the 2 plugs in the pump itself. So there'll be a plug in the back on the bottom and usually a plug in the front side of the pump. And we're going to want to take those out. When draining your equipment, this is a good time to lube up all of your seals, gaskets, and O-rings with a good silicone lube. As we pull out our plugs, we're going to want to put them in the actual basket for the pump so we don't lose them. And then we'll know where they are next year when we go to open the pool. Then we'll go over to our filter, and we'll want to take that plug out also and let that start draining. And I like to just put everything inside that hair basket. Oh, like this. And we'll take our pressure gauge out. And we'll also take our backwash eyesight out. And we'll just loosen up this air bleed valve. And as you can see, that's letting the sand filter actually drain. With our pump drained and our sand filter draining, if you have an automatic chlorine feeder, this is also the time to take this apart, and basically this is probably going to have some chlorine in it, and it's probably full of water. So what we're going to do is you're going to take the dial and turn it completely off. So, and what that's going to do is at least keep water from running out this side. So when we attach it, we don't have chlorine coming out. And then this back side here, as we unhook it, it's holding the water. And what I like to do is I'll actually take this over to the pool. This one's still full of chlorine. So what I'm gonna do is just easily pour some of that excess water into the pool, making sure I don't lose any pucks in the pool. If you do lose a puck in the pool, you're gonna have to get your net and get it out. You don't want it to sit down there and stain your liner. With the water out of this, I'm just gonna use a garbage bag. I'm gonna pour these pucks in there and seal it up. With our chlorine feeder cleaned out, you'll wanna raise it upside down like this. As you can see, it looks like it's empty, but if you work this valve, you do get quite a bit more water out of it. So there's water in that line, and that's the mistake people get, is they don't work this valve back and forth and get that last ounce of water out of there. Sometimes that'll freeze up in there and your chlorine feeder will be shot. So now that everything's unhooked and everything's drained out, the only thing we didn't pull the plugs on is the actual heater, and we're going to force most of the water out of the exchanger in these lines through the return jets, and then we'll come back and pull a plug on each side of the heater and then finish blowing out the manifolds. So here's where, if you're going to use an air compressor, you're going to want to put one of your plugs back into your actual pump, and then you'll thread this in where another pump plug goes, which I always go in the front part of it with my compressor fittings. And then with blowing that out, you would actually put your lid back on the pump, and then basically you'd just open up each valve as you wanted to blow out those lines. When we blow out our skimmers, we use a skimmer blowout tool. This tool is just made of PVC, and it directs the water back into the pool as we blow the line. This tool just basically threads into the inlet port and the bottom of the skimmer. And don't worry, if you don't have one of these, we'll show you how to build one at the end of the video, or you can always just use your shop vac to vacuum out the excess water in the skimmer and then suck the water out of the lines. We'll start with blowing out the skimmer first. If your skimmer had water in it when you installed your tool, you'll want to blow out your line first, then twist your tool out and let the water drain down into your cleared lines. Once the water's drained, put your tool back in and blow it again until the line is clear. When blowing out two skimmers on the same line, you'll want to watch the skimmers, and one of them is going to clear first, usually the one that's closest to the pump house. And once that one clears, you're going to put your hand over that skimmer and it'll clear the one that's at the end of the line. If you don't have the skimmer blowout tools, basically I'll take my shop vac and I will suck all the water and suck through the lines until I'm not getting anything on both skimmers. And then I'll go back and I normally put a plug in the one that's closest to the pump house. And then I'll go back down to the end skimmer and then use my shop vac and suck it one more time just to make sure all the water's out. We're going to make sure our skimmer line's closed. So with our main drain, what we're going to do is we're going to put our blower onto the suction side of this pump, and we're going to blow air through this main drain until the main drain clears, and basically it's going to bubble into the pool for about 30 seconds. And while we still have our air pressure blowing on the main drain, we're going to turn this valve off, and this is going to airlock that line and prevent the water from the pool coming back up that line. Now just shut your valve to airlock it. So if for some reason your valve's failing when you blow your main drain out and you feel air coming back, you can use a number 8 marine plug, and this will fit right in here. You can just tighten this down for a little extra insurance on that. If you have direct access to your return lines by winterizing ports, you can use one of these to get the air through your lines. This one's a return line, that one's a booster pump for a vacuum. And if you don't have those, you can always go through the back side of the pump, or I'd always look around and see if you have any unions. If you have unions, you can just twist these off and separate the lines right there. Now that we're ready to blow out our returns, we're gonna just blow them out using the back side of the actual pool pump, even though we have winterizing ports. We're just gonna do it this way so we can show you that it's possible. And the first thing we're gonna do, if we don't have a rollout backwash line and it's hard lined in, we're gonna blow out the backwash line. So with the multi-port set on waste, we're gonna blow this line out for about 15 seconds and make sure that that line's blown out. Once that line's blown out, we're gonna put our multi-port valve to recirculate, and this is gonna bypass our filter and send all of our air directly to our return lines. If you don't have a sand filter and you have a cartridge filter, you're going to want to blow down the return lines until you're only getting air out of the drain of the cartridge filter. Once there's no more water draining out of the cartridge filter from blowing on the return lines, I temporarily put a plug back into the bottom of the cartridge filter, so that way I get max flow of air to my return lines to the pool. Now that we're blowing out our return lines, we'll watch and see which ones blow out first. If we have multiple return lines, once one's just blowing out air and the other return lines aren't blowing anything, it means that this one's the first one in line to the pump house. So by covering this one or putting a temporary plug in it, it's going to force the air down that line and clear the water out of the other return lines. So as you can see, this one has 3, so I'll actually put a temporarily put a plug in this one. And then I'll work my way over to the next one that is blowing air. And by covering this one, it should send the rest of the airflow down the return lines and blow out the last return jet. If you have a booster pump on your pool and the sidewall return for that booster pump isn't completely blowing all the water out and it's just kind of gargling and you're not getting a lot of air pressure through it, what I do is after all my other returns are blown out and clear, I'll put caps or plugs on those ones, and this should force the air pressure through that actual vacuum line. If you still can't get all the water out of it, or it just seems like you're not getting a lot of air pressure, you can shop vac from the pool side, or you can remove the hoses from the actual booster pump itself and blow air through there. With our return lines clear, now it's time to finish blowing out the heater. We're going to remove the pressure switch, which is usually in the front panel of your heater. If there isn't a pressure switch in that front panel, then it's probably in your manifold and you have a newer heater. And if it is in the manifold, it's usually inverted, so basically it'll drain just through gravity, so you won't have to worry about it. We also want to turn off all of our gas valves on our heater. Might be one on the side, and then there's definitely one on the inside of the heater you want to turn off. Next, we're going to take out our drain plugs on our heater. So we want to take out at least one on each side if there's drain plugs on the sides of the heaters. And I usually go kitty corner if there's like 2 on one side and 1 on the other. If there's no drain plugs on the side and you have one of the newer heaters with the plastic composite manifolds, the drain plug's going to be right underneath that where the pipes go into the actual heater. With our drain plugs removed, we'll hit the return lines one more time with air and just make sure everything's drained out of the heater. If you have any extra features such as an autofill, or you have a slide, or some type of water feature that hooks up to the pool, you're definitely going to have to find where those hook up to your water sources. On the autofills, it's got to go to some type of a water line somewhere in the pump room or towards a spigot on the house. You'll want to take off wherever that connects by union or whatnot, and you're going to have to blow out that autofill or vacuum it from the actual autofill canister. See, we built ourselves a little device to add the antifreeze to our 1.5" return jets, and this is just one of our 1.5" male threaded ends to a slip with a little piece of 1.5" PVC with an 1.5" elbow on it. So when adding antifreeze to your return lines, I like to get at least a half gallon into each return fitting. Every line on the actual pool should have at least a gallon of antifreeze in it. Once you've got your antifreeze in your return fitting, I like to put my plugs in then. And if you're using a plastic threaded plug with the O-ring, you want that nice and snug, and you want to make sure that that O-ring didn't pop out anywhere around the return faceplate. If you don't have a tool to get your antifreeze in your return jets, you can always just use like a garden hose with a funnel attachment to it, or even just putting the antifreeze jug actually into the port and actually squeezing it. When I do this, I lose minimal amount of antifreeze, so it works pretty good. Next, we'll add a half gallon to a gallon of antifreeze down our skimmer. Next comes time to actually plug in your skimmer. Here we're going to use a plastic winterizing plug with an O-ring, and we're just going to screw that down into the bottom of the skimmer, hand tight, and then I like to use a basin wrench, and we're going to give it a 1/4 turn. Next, we're going to put our 2 empty RV antifreeze jugs in the skimmer, and this is going to prevent the skimmer from housing from breaking from ice expansion. So what we're going to do is we're just going to crush one down a little bit, and we're going to slip the plastic label off of it, and this will fit right through the skimmer and into the actual skimmer housing. And the other one will just drop down in there. And then I like to take a zip tie and zip tie these 2 handles together. And the one coming through the actual skimmer opening in the pool will prevent the other one from floating up when water is introduced to the skimmer housing during the winter. A 2-liter bottle with sand in it also works in the skimmer. Another alternative to actually plugging the bottom of your skimmer with an actual plug is one of these devices called a gizmo. And these work great because they are a multi-purpose tool. Basically, they're going to plug your skimmer for you, and then basically they have this hollow body right here, which is going to take the impact of any ice that gets in your skimmer. So you'll want to put at least 3 to 5 wraps of Teflon tape around these threads, and basically these just thread into the actual skimmer, and you'll just want to go hand tight on these. And like you see, it seals the skimmer, keep the water from going in it, and it also, if you get water in the skimmer housing and it does freeze, it'll actually squeeze this housing of the gizmo. So great alternative if you don't want to have to plug and put jugs in your skimmer. So on these autofills, now that we've taken our float out, basically we've blown the line out, or you can chop back it out from this side. And then after we've got this line cleared out, we put about a half a gallon of antifreeze into the actual water line in the autofill, and I just put the jug in there and squeezed it down that line. So once that's done, and then the outside is plugged to the pool, take a one of my antifreeze jugs, and I just kind of squash it down, put the lid on it so that way it's not as tall, and then that can just kind of sit in there like so. And there is a little bit of excess antifreeze in the bottom just from trying to squeeze it into that actual line. Then I'll just take a regular garbage bag and place that over the hole, and then we'll get a nice tight fit with our autofill lid. And then once we get our cover on and everything, then I'll just kind of go and put some type of weight on top of this just so that doesn't pop out of there during the winter. Now that our pool is completely winterized, We want to turn off all of our breakers and basically pull our pins off of our timer box if we have one. We don't want any accidental startups. All that's left to do now is put your winter cover on your pool. If you have a mesh safety cover, you're going to want to go around and raise all your anchor bolts around the pool. With the safety mesh cover, you want to fill your water level back up within 2 inches of the bottom of the skimmer. Putting on a mesh safety cover is better with 2 people. When we take them off in the spring, we like to fold them up in an accordion style. So that way when we go to put them back on, they'll just unaccordion right back onto the pool the same way we took it off. You can also use a plastic tarp style cover. They're more reasonably priced. You just want to make sure that you have enough water bags to go around the full perimeter of the actual pool to hold them in place. You can also use aqua blocks, which are just plastic tubs that hold water. With the solid tarp style covers, you're going to want to have some type of a submersible pump though to pump them out periodically. Being that they're solid, they don't let the water through like the safety mesh covers. If you do have an auto cover on your pool, you're going to want to raise your water up a little bit higher. Normally at least to the bottom of the skimmer or even a little bit up into the skimmer is recommended because with the auto covers they actually rest on top of the water. With the auto covers they also require a submersible pump to pump off the water. Thanks for joining us with Pool Elementary on our in-ground pool closing video. If you're new to the channel, we hope to earn you as a subscriber. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment and we'll get back to you on them. Hit that like button if you learned anything from our video. And now stay tuned for our skimmer tool build. We want to send a shout out to Sid for letting us do this video at her place. And we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin.
First you want to measure the suction hole in the bottom of your skimmer to see if it's 1.5 inch or 2 inch.
Your local hardware stores usually have your RV marine antifreeze. As you can see, that's a pretty good deal. It's $3.50 a piece. And you want to make sure you get a high quality one that's 50 below or better. And a lot of these will actually say they're for swimming pools. So you want to get a gallon per line you're blowing out. So you would get 1 gallon for your main drain, your skimmer, and I like to use 1 gallon per 2 return jets. So if your pool has like 4 return jets, sometimes get it 2 gallons for those. And then just keep in consideration if you have any water features or any autofills, you'll need a gallon for those too. Most pools take between 4 and 6 gallons of marine antifreeze. So when building your L for your skimmer, if you've got a 2 inch line in the bottom of your skimmer, you're going to want to get one of these. And as you can see, they're $2.49 here. And with that, you're going to want to get yourself a 90-degree elbow. Those are actually $4 for the 2 inch. And if you're buying the 1.5 inch, it's actually quite a bit cheaper. It's only $3 for an elbow. And then your 1.5 inch male threaded piece to screw in the skimmer. Those look like they're about $5. When buying your PVC for your L piece for your skimmer, they come in 10-foot sticks. As you can see, the 1.5 inch is $8.99 a stick. Always check with one of the hardware employees and see if they have any shorter pieces. You really only need 4 feet of the PVC to make your L. Once you get all your pieces at the hardware store, you're going to want to take your male threaded end to slip female end, and you're going to want to slip in a piece of the PVC at least 2 feet long to clear the whole depth of the skimmer. Then you're going to place your elbow on, and then you'll put the rest of your PVC, I would say at least 1.5 feet into your elbow, and this will create this L-shaped piece that just threads directly into the skimmer and will help you get all that water out of that line. I normally prime and PVC glue these, but if you're not wanting to spend the extra 20 bucks on just some PVC glue and this is the only thing you're ever gonna make, you can also use some household tape like Gorilla Tape and just tape these ends. These fittings usually fit pretty tight in here, but the last thing you wanna do is be blowing out your lines and this piece comes shooting out into your pool. So, piece of cake.